arrived as FCA's new president. And just before coming, he called Ralph. I still remember Ralph was standing at the phone in our kitchen. And I heard him say, "Hello, Mr. Cannon." "Well, I suppose so." And I thought, what's going on? He had asked Ralph to return to the dean's office. So Jack Johnson and his wife Marilyn, who were house parents of Griffin at the time, moved out of the dorm to take over the historic area. Jack's skills as a builder and his love of history with Marilyn's quilting and sewing expertise were a perfect fit for the ongoing project. They were just perfect for this project. Under Jack's leadership, future additions to the area included the reconstruction of the council house. Ralph only had to go on occasion to decipher the numbers that were on the end of the logs that he had put there. His handwriting left much to be desired. Now it's a popular restaurant for travelers on the Trace. A log home donated by Paige Cochran and moved from Eupora, which became the bed and breakfast. The Colonel Drain home moved from 14 miles north of French Camp, the original French Camp U.S. Post Office building, which used to sit where the fire station is now and where I bought stamps when we came in 1963, and various other log buildings. Later, the FCA Alumni Museum was added. I would be remiss if I failed to mention that Nita Curtis was instrumental in getting the Alumni Museum to the place it is today. At that time, I was living for 18 months in Colorado Springs while helping Christian Camping International. I vividly remember one evening after work, coming home, getting in bed, and the phone rang, and it was Nita Curtis. In her typical style of confidence and gentleness, she suggested that I provide a landscape drawing for the museum, and no, the distance is not an issue. And the drawings will be in the mail in the morning, Margie. Her efforts on behalf of the FCA Alumni Association were monumental, not only in the building of the museum, but also in its maintenance for many years. She's definitely one of our heroes. Now, every time I come back to French Camp, whether it's from a shopping trip or a long trip, and see the picturesque village, I'm reminded of God's provision all along the way, almost 40 years ago. Provisions of funds for purchase, manpower in our students' work crew, physical protection, and wisdom for those learning new skills that were needed. What a delight it is to hear former students visiting FCA, now with their own families, relate their memories of learning to move the log cabins, split cypress shingles, and split rail fences, yes, and even riding in a hearse to work. They brag to their children. No longer young restless boys, they now take pride in having a part in building the French Camp Historic District. God's story continues, and the known and the unknown. And I want to just tell you that as I think back, Ralph often told me that he was so sure that God put him in the home where he was built, where he was born. If he hadn't been in this home that was so fractured and so hurting, he would have never come to Mississippi. And God used those circumstances, and he felt those circumstances really equipped him to relate to kids that were here. Long before ever was there a thought of a historic village. We live by faith in the fact that God's word is true, and he says he is working out his plans, not to harm us, nor to hurt us, but to give us a future and a hope. And our responsibility is to live into total surrender of what his plan is. We may not see where it's headed, but that plan could include having a painful home situation, watching children suffer unmercifully, which breaks our heart, or dealing with a terminal illness, or dealing with the loss of a spouse, or dealing with struggles as to how are we going to make it financially. I know there's no one in this room that doesn't have something on their heart that they're struggling with, and they're saying, "Oh God, won't you fix it?" I mean, that's what our prayers mostly are. God, won't you fix it? But the truth of the matter is, we are so blessed to know that God has promised that these things are under His control and in His sovereign will. And I remember not long after Ralph died, 2 or 3 years afterwards, reading in John chapter 9, when so many people were asking Jesus, why is this blind man blind? Is it because he sinned or his parents sinned? And Jesus said, neither one. He said, this happened so that the work of God might be displayed in his life. And then I want to encourage us to realize that nothing comes into our lives, nothing, not today, tomorrow, ever will come into our life apart from being part of God's providence, His plan, and He's in control, even when we don't see the result. I'm so blessed by the 11th chapter of Hebrews, where it lists all these men of faith, and there's a little verse in there that says, none of them ever saw the promise fulfilled. Man! And yet they were faithful to follow after God, even though they did not see a fulfillment of promise. So our job is to simply follow His instructions. And one of His instructions is, in everything give thanks, for this is the will of God concerning you. We have no idea what God is accomplishing. He has brought people to this school through that cabin because people stopped to eat. They didn't know there was a school. They came and said, ooh, I know somebody that needs this. But a long time ago, He let a little boy be born into an abusive home and got him over here to French camp. And that cabin is down there now. And God is continuing to work out His purposes. So when we pass that junction, I love the Baptist church spire that just points up to heaven and just reminds me, God is in control. And when I see that cabin and I realize how it came here and now how it's working, and that whole district, Pioneer Day, hundreds of people here. Ralph had no idea there'd ever be anything like a Pioneer Day. And God has continued to use this place for His ministry. And in my own personal life, it is such a monument, true monument, to the testimony of God's faithfulness and that He is working out His purposes. And we don't know the end of the story yet, but we do know who's in charge, and we can trust Him. Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Pictures. Excuse me. Yes. You gotta look at these, and I need you all to speak up because there are some people in here I don't know. A lot of people I don't know, but it's overwhelming to me to realize that back then we had this many people there. And I thank Alex because he put back on a terribly busy, windy, icy night. He put this all together, and then we had to call it off in March, with the ice storm.
This is in February. If you punch this
was
button,
it
it will go
February?
forward. If you punch this button, it will come back.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay. That was taken. All of these were, now actually that one was taken after the bicentennial celebration, because at the bicentennial celebration the railings were not up yet. Now that was pretty more recent too. And that was more recent. This was painted by Ray Morgan. And this is a picture that is hanging in my house and has a story that was just so precious. I wanted it so badly, and Ralph had saved up some money over several months knowing Ray was painting it. Ray lived downtown in the tall brick building there. He had a studio in there as well. And he painted this and brought it to Ralph and said, this needs to go up to Harvest Festival. So I really wanted it just because of all that was in there, memory-wise. And at lunch, it was brought up to auction, and I bid up to $200, and it finally sold for $750. And that was in, that was almost 40 years ago. And I went to lunch to pick up Ralph's lunch, and he stayed at the gym where he would always stay because of all the stuff and just sort of riding herd. I went back with his lunch, and by my chair, this picture was leaning. And I said, honey, Mr. McFarland left this. Mr. McFarland was the one that bought it. And he said, honey, you don't know. While you were gone, Mr. McFarland said, here, Ralph, I bought this for you. So that was when that was the age when he was working on it. There's Irene Taylor. And there's Miss Whitfield, isn't that right? And I don't know, that could have been a student there on the
Must be
right.
a student.
But that was actually down in the, oh, y'all, this is really dating it.
Yeah, I've
This
seen
is
that
this is where the weight room is now. And looking out those windows, that's the old gym before the union was built.
video.
I wish Taylor could see it. This is Chad in his youth.
Oh.
There is the octogenarian who was the expert, and there's Ralph and another one of his boys, and
And
he's,
they're making the slats.
they're doing the split shingles.
Well, they're called slats, aren't
I only heard shingles.
they? Okay.
I don't know, Polly. We didn't know what we were doing, so we just called it.
Well, I grew up with that kind of a roof.
Okay, now that, I missed that. That was a photo op. Stuart came down, the president, and said, "Here, I want a picture of me splitting a shingle." So Ralph set him up, and there he is. And here's Cully at the age when and those all were part of the work crew.
Yeah.
And they were stacking, see all the stacks of shingles? And this was Keith Baker right here. Some of y'all remember Keith. He's in Florida. And that was splitting the shingles before the cabin was finished. Now those bleachers were brought in for the wagon train to be circled up. Now this was the day of the wagon train. And here is Tim Angle. And that's Tammy. And this,
Which one's Tim?
this is Tim Angle here. And this is Cully, and this is Pepper Denman, and Tammy and Laura Love Denman.
Yeah.
And I can't recall who the little girl is. Any of y'all know who that is? Okay, we'll move along. This is that's Kim sticking her head out with the yellow bonnet. And I believe Irene Taylor made that yellow bonnet for her. And here are the people. There's Ralph in the front, just doing whatever. And you see the house up in the back that's now Sherry and Bo, Kirby's house. These are folks gathering for the celebration. And you see all the cars on the trace?
Oh, my goodness.
They were lined up all over, and the wagon train was circled up. There's another close-up of the wagon. This was afterwards. This is Meemaw Throkill,
Yeah.
who worked so long with Irene, with the craft program. She worked for a long time, and that's Pete Throkill's mother. And this is part of the original setup, that lower half of the south end before we had to swap it, where we had some old period furniture.
Now, is that down at the drain house?
No, this is the log cabin.
Still-
That's the log cabin.
She's saying, is
I
that
mean,
down
is
at
that
the drain
furniture?
room,
Is
the
that
furniture?
furniture?
You know, I don't know where it's
I
gone.
think it is.
I have no idea.
I've seen it.
You may see some pieces that were there. This is, we just roped off and just had a little walk-through area. And this is where you started up the steps. Now the cash register is right in that area.
I was thinking that had our notes there.
And Irene set up on the other side a quilt to be quilted. This is the
Oh,
Branding
Sonny.
family. There's
Oh.
Sonny and Doreen.
And Doreen's our speaker in July, by the way.
Okay.
During the what?
She's our speaker in July.
And you know, I never told this moment notice, so your children can tell their children. That's pretty cool.
So your children.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That's oh.
And this is actually in the council house when Ralph was down there helping them one day before they got it finished. But those are two crew. Now, isn't that Hudson?
Who is that?
That's Betty Sue's husband,
That's-
Hudson.
Is it?
Yep.
Is it
That's
Hudson?
interesting.
And he was supposed to be
I never saw him on his pad.
what do you call it? What is it, a rider that carries the mail? Pony Express
Pony
rider or
Express.
something. Anyway, and I don't, who is that, Betty Sue?
That's a ranger of some sort. Wasn't it?
Yeah, maybe it's just somebody from the trace, because I tell you, those folks up at the northern office at Tupelo were so excited about this, and they would come down, and that's very well. That is an emblem from the trace, so that could be, no wonder I don't
I think
think
it's
it's
good.
called.
It's on this here.
Yep. And does anybody know who that is?
Well, now that looks familiar to me.
I have no idea who it is. Anybody know who that is? Surely I was going to get some help here. What about that one?
like the constable or something.
Wow.
Anybody know him?
Reverend Mr. Black.
Okay.
Yeah,
Now
he had a collar on.
this is Irene Taylor's, no, this is not Irene Taylor's wife, there's another one. This is Mr. Carter, who lived up at the lake, you remember? And he would come, when we first came to French Camp, I don't remember what his name was, but he would drive these horses, this wagon, on a dirt road, all the way down from up where the lake was, and it was not the big lake then.
I remember that.
And he'd drive it all the way through, and it would take him a day, just to get to Ware and back. He would make these runs back and forth. And he was very excited to be part of that. Anybody know who this is? Y'all gotta speak up and tell me if you know who the people are. I just don't know. This was Irene Taylor's buggy. And I think that's
That was
her,
Don,
a relative of hers.
it was her brother Don's,
Okay, maybe that is.
Lisa's daddy. Lisa
Okay,
Hennings.
Lisa Hennings.
Yes.
Okay. And look at this, look at this sled that this horse pulled.
Those were called slides.
Slides.
Okay. I'm
Well,
glad you're
I-
here, Polly.
Yeah, because Hudson built a slide.
Is that the hers?
Hudson built it?
Yes. Oh, there's the
There's
hearse.
the hers.
Built that
Oh,
one,
my
but he has-
goodness.
I have one at my house.
I didn't realize it was even in the picture.
Margie, did you hear Betty Sue say Hudson built the slides?
He didn't build that slide, but there's a slide at the house that he built.
Really?
I remember we had a slide and I would hook the horse up and go down and bring rocks up and make a fire pit. Huh, when I was a kid.
Okay, now, this is Irene's daddy, I'm pretty sure, seated on that board or whatever
That
they
looks
call
like her brother Joe Jr.
it. Okay, well,
Probably her dad.
I just called her and talked to her, and she said she thought her daddy was in there.
Oh,
But she didn't see the picture, so you're probably more accurate.
Oh, wait a minute. Is that a Downing, that man in the suit?
Reamer?
No.
No,
I
that
don't
was
remember,
Green.
but he looks like a Downing, doesn't he?
I don't know. This was a man who came up from RTS, or it was just in its beginnings. But he was the official preacher, and he dressed in style. And I don't know who these musicians were.
This is after we
Now
left.
look at all those
Look.
folks.
Wow.
Can you
That's
see
before we
anybody
had
you know in
That's
there?
before you had the tent.
Is that Mr. Maxwell in the middle?
Yes, yes.
Oh, my goodness.
Here's
And
Aunt
that'd be Ann's
Vincent's
mom.
mother and father.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
And Vincent.
Dot and
Jack.
Leon Maxwell.
And I think they were earlier in the
Oh, yes, I
picture.
thought he was.
Were they?
That's who he is, Leon Mack.
Yeah, they weren't living up here at
Who
the
are the
time.
ladies on the front?
I do not know them.
Hmm. I don't see anybody else.
Okay,
I
we
mean,
got
these
some
would
more
be
crowd
local
pictures.
residents, wouldn't they?
Somebody's up on that roof, huh?
Yeah.
Wow, got a good picture of the slats, or the shingles, or
Yeah.
whatever it is.
Now, this is Janet P. Right there.
Well,
Yes.
right behind that man, right up, is that not Ricky Pruitt?
Yes, this is Ricky
There's
Bobby.
Ricky, yeah.
Oh.
And that look down on the end down there, on the left, right side, is that not Pam Marshall?
It sure looks like her. It does.
Looks like who?
This looks like Pam Marshall. There's more pictures of
And
the
look at the
crowd.
color, and that's the colored wagons that went down the trail?
They went down the trace. They went to Washington DC.
What year was that?
1976. That was the
We left
bicentennial.
in 74.
Oh. Do y'all know who that is?
Mayor Frederick
Yeah.
Stewart.
Dignitaries.
You were not here? You weren't here during that time?
No, we left in 53. And then come back to
Now,
the
tell me if you recognize anybody. There's Hudson again.
Yeah.
Oh.
That's a good picture. And that's, y'all wanna know who that is?
It's gotta be a Smith.
It's Christine Rayburn.
Christine Rayburn,
There is.
That's who I thought it was.
Was that really her hair?
I thought it was one of
Yes,
her
she
daughters.
had very long hair.
Bill has it.
And this is Mr. and Miss
That's
Scoggins.
Grady.
Oh, yes.
And the
Oh,
little,
that's-
that's Misty Branding.
Oh,
That's
I was
Missy
fixing to say
Brandon that
Jenny.
did on?
No, the man is Charlie
Grady.
Scoggins.
Grady.
Grady.
Grady Scoggins, Charlie Scoggins' father.
Cause Jenny stayed with me.
And who's the
Miss
baby?
Christine.
And she is the sister of Erling Crowder and Ruby Stevens. Yeah, three sisters.
And who's the child, Margie?
That's Doreen and Sonny's daughter, Misty.
Really?
Lower of the wagon
Who
train.
has a son that's graduating high school.
I know. And that was
Now,
Ann.
Suzanne Shattuck right here.
Oh, her last name. She was a dorm student who was one of these children that came to French camp terribly backward and afraid, but left very confident.
Which one's Suzanne
That
Shattuck?
song looks like.
The braids. That's Laura, Suzanne,
That's
this is
Suzanne.
Lorraine Ace and Suzanne Shaddix. And I don't recognize who that is. There's the Baptist church back there. Now that's Ruth Thomas.
Yes.
This is Ruth Thomas,
That
and
means
Renee
Tony's
told me
mama?
the name of this
Yeah.
lady.
Tony's mama?
This woman and her husband lived on property owned by
Oh,
Ruth and Deck.
yes. What were their names?
And they were just
Oh.
like family to her, but they were like, sort of like sharecroppers, I guess, but, Ruth and she were great friends. And Ruth lived in the house that, Debbie and Glenn Barlow, they built that house.
Really?
But they lived in the, out on 413.
Yeah. Right, at that time they were out on
That
that.
time.
Across the
At
road
that
from
time.
her.
A lot of folks. And I'm wondering, how did we publicize that back then?
How'd you do what?
Publicize all this? I don't know.
On that phone that was, party lines?
Yes, there you
Probably
go.
didn't take too many phone calls to get the word out.
Yeah.
Maybe a lot of them just followed
Well,
the
wait, now,
train.
there was a building in the background.
Where?
That looked like the lodge.
That's the
No,
Mason.
it's
Yeah,
a
that's a
Mason
big
crowd.
That was a huge crowd.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Well, now, what's that, whose house is that right there on the hill then?
That's the little house that was built for Helen Branning's mother.
Look at all those people.
But it now belongs to the Kirbys, Sherry.
I've just never seen it from that house.
Did y'all come and bring a covered dish and have lunch?
No.
No.
No food? All those people and y'all didn't
Somebody
eat?
fed the 5,000 there.
I mean, really?
There wasn't any food.
You just sent them on home back there?
They didn't put as much emphasis on food as they do now.
You're right.
No.
We all gathered and
It was like
had a
the
ball.
numbers of-
much available, was it?
Yeah.
And who is the older man? Does anybody know the
You
one
know, we
standing?
saw it a while ago.
You would think
I
it had
love
something
the
to do with Miss
benches, how
Irene.
they're,
They're
they're painted
Oh.
wall.
I know.
One in New Mecklen.
We could put that on Pinterest right now and it'd go like that.
Right.
You're right.
Look at that.
Yeah. More than one
Oh,
way to
is that
skin a
the way,
cat when
oh,
you
that's
need
their
it.
benches.
Benches.
How about that?
These-
Those were rounds of the cypress
Mhm.
before they were split. Ralph just blew them out.
So everybody just had those kind of clothes back then?
No, everybody
Or
dressed in that period.
Everybody planned to come all
Now,
dressed
that
up
is
to
my
bicentennial?
sister's husband and his horse. That's Harold Wayne.
Is it?
Uh-huh.
Oh.
Everyone walked with the-
And that's
His
down
last
by
name
Baptist
is-
Church, that's
That's
That's Robinson.
Robinson's house there.
He got killed?
He got killed in 79.
Yeah.
Oh, shortly thereafter.
This is just a demonstration that they did for the folks on everything.
Who's the redhead?
Redhead.
Standing up there.
That's a, Armstrong.
I was gonna say, it looked better than Armstrong.
That's Craig Applegate splitting, and he was on the crew, and he is one who married, Letchworth.
Letchworth, yeah.
Gary Letchworth?
Gary Letchworth's son, son-in-law.
That's Gary Letchworth's son-in-law?
Well, not now, but
Oh, okay.
he did marry his daughter.
Okay.
Do y'all know who that is? The
There
chuck
was-
wagon.
There was two food. Here's the chuck wagon. That proves it.
But they didn't feed us.
They would have had to eat along the way though, I guess.
That's why the whole parish lives in it.
Somebody in Louisiana.
Yep. Look at those wagons, that's the trace.
It was a long, do you know how many wagons there were?
No, I don't.
Were those some of our folks, or was
No,
that
these were
some
just
with them?
community folks, and this was the kind of situation, I don't think I have a picture of Rusty, but I do have a picture somewhere in my album of him in this, I didn't know who he was.
No, I've never seen a crowd like that.
I know. Now, y'all, I love that picture.
Now, wait a minute.
They're coming out from the school,
Academy?
coming from.
Oh, that's Miss Brandon's house.
It's come down from this house.
We should see Ken Utley on a horse in here pretty
It
soon.
seemed like vaguely I remember talking about the way it came. Yeah, I was there.
The guy
That
with
looks
the beard
like
there
that.
was Terry Northington, who was a dorm parent at Flower Hill.
We need to back up.
Isn't that pretty?
Yes.
Wow.
Oh, that's Don
Who
Edwards.
made all these?
Is that Don?
Uh-huh.
Roger, who made these pictures?
Don
Doreen
who?
Brady.
And Don
That Jason.
Edwards, Miss Irene's brother,
And that's
and
Lois.
his wife Dolores, and Jason.
Oh, is that Jason? It sure is. Y'all know Dolores, she's in a nursing home now, isn't she?
Oh, yes. She's
Now,
over in
Dolores
Eupora.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And the little boy is,
It's Jason Edwards, who actually was in the graduating class with
Lisa's,
Coley in
Lisa's
19.
brother?
No, it would be,
Well, Lisa's
Is that
mother
Lisa's
is.
brother?
little-
yes, it's
Yes.
who, yes, her older brother. There's Ken.
Oh.
Oh, my.
And who's the other
I
guy?
don't
That
know.
Northern,
Who's the guy with him? We should have had that picture up for the dedication of the arena, shouldn't we?
Yes.
Did you see
Now,
that horse?
That's
how
Ralph
sweet.
sitting on the log cabin, on the council house log.
The
That-
numbers you was talking about.
Margie, back it up one. Sit, y'all look at that horse over there.
With the purple
The spotted one?
I think it's called a Halloween.
That would be, Appaloosa.
Appaloosa.
No, he don't,
Now, this one I just love because it's a framed picture hanging in Kim's house. And this is Jenny Cockrell, and that's Kim, and this is Stuart Angle, and this was the preacher, and that's Ralph. And when my grandchild, Katie Jo, came and saw the picture, said, "Y'all have a picture of Little House on the Prairie." There's Pa Ingalls, and there's what they call her, and it was the cutest thing. She just was sure it was from Little House on the Prairie. I said, "Honey, that's your Papa Newman."
yeah, who's the long-haired hippie? What's his name?
Yeah, and Ben looks like that right now. Yeah. Well, that's it. Thank you, Alex, for putting all that on. That was so